Earlier this year, we lost Akira Toriyama. When the news broke, there were a lot of different emotions flowing through me as I found out and as I was recording a video to let my audience know what was going on. It was obviously shock at first, and then after some time passed, that's when the emotions kicked in and I realized that he was gone. And Akira Toriyama meant a lot to my life. If it wasn't for Toriyama, I wouldn't have gotten into Dragon Ball or Dragon Quest, my favorite video game series of all time. And as a result of what Dragon Ball has meant for me since I was a teenager when I first discovered it, I never would have expected that years later I'd be able to produce content about Dragon Ball, and it literally changed my life. Dragon Ball gave me opportunities to meet people that I never thought I would have met, including actual members that worked on the series. It allowed me to meet some of the friends that I would make that would become part of my personal life. And I was able to be one of the lucky people that got to have fun while working. Make no mistake, YouTube is work. But talking about Dragon Ball to me was also fun, even in the times when I don't like it. However, now that a few months have gone by, and Dragon Ball Daima has begun, I thought it would be appropriate to reflect on the future of Dragon Ball with its creator no longer being able to contribute to his grand creation. So on this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth, I want to discuss the future of Dragon Ball without Toriyama, my concerns about it, his importance to the series, which may seem obvious, but there's actually much more that you may not know or may not have thought about, and give perspective on this massive franchise continuing without its creator. Earlier this year, I produced a documentary, part of the Dragon Ball In-Depth series, discussing the life of Toriyama, telling the story of how he was initially discovered, what led to him getting his first big break, his era writing weekly manga, Dr. Slump, and later Dragon Ball, and really how he made his work a household name. Proceeds from that documentary went to the Brain Injury Institute of America, to which I made a donation last summer. If you saw the entire video and shared it out, I thank you for contributing to this donation. Now I want to look towards the future. What will happen to Dragon Ball without its original creator? There are a lot of fears about this among the fandom, especially those who were hardcore Toriyama enthusiasts. A lot of people point to Star Wars and what happened in the years that Disney purchased Star Wars from George Lucas, the original creator. Disney has pretty much taken the biggest film franchise in history and ran it completely into the ground to where it's become a mockery of itself and created a divisive fan base that to this day is still fighting with itself, arguing about what direction the series should take going forward. Now, I do not believe that Dragon Ball is going to end up like Star Wars, and I feel this way because Dragon Ball is still in the hands of the Japanese, and the Japanese entire business model, their perspective, even the way they view the world is vastly different than that of Disney and their viewpoints. However, it makes sense to have some concern. Now look, I'll be the first one to tell you that the Toriyama that was involved in modern Dragon Ball was vastly different from the Toriyama who produced the original 42 volumes of the manga. The Toriyama of old was younger, he was a hustler, and he was producing manga at a weekly rate from 1979 to 1995 with one vacation in between Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball. It actually pisses me off a bit when dumb fans say that Toriyama was lazy. This man was anything but lazy. He had to deliver a weekly chapter completely finished with one, maybe two assistants and his editor for 15 years. And that's not even including all the work he did on video games at the time, such as, of course, the Dragon Quest series, Chrono Trigger, the Tobal games, and Blue Dragon. On top of that, he was also helping the anime staff when it came to drawing some of the legendary movie characters, such as, of course, Broly, Cooler, and other fan favorites. Modern Toriyama was a very different man. His children had grown up, he was already in retirement for many years, and didn't really do a lot of work during those years. And he deserves it. Dragon Ball became a cultural phenomenon internationally, and he really had nothing to worry about. But what a lot of fans don't know is that he was already wealthy before he even began Dragon Ball. Dr. Slump made him a rich man, but Dragon Ball blew him up beyond anything, and he was considered one of the wealthiest manga authors in history in Japan. I don't have to tell you how big Dragon Ball is. So he was pretty set for life. However, even during his retirement, he would pop up from time to time, usually working on Dragon Quest games or drawing art for one-shot manga and things of that nature. In 2013, Toriyama came out of retirement briefly to produce Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, a story that was the first new multi-chapter story Toriyama had written in several years, and secretly became a prequel of sorts to Dragon Ball. Although people did not know that at the time until it was finally released. Once in a while, Toriyama would lend his pen to drawing some of the Dragon Ball video game characters and just helping the staff with some of the work that needed to be added. For example, he helped Nahoishi with her episode of Bardock one-shot manga by designing Frieza's ancestor, Chilled. In 2008, he co-wrote the script for Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return, the OVA that was produced to celebrate the anniversary of Shueisha. But it wasn't until 2013's Battle of Gods that he really got back into the thick of things by co-writing the script with Yusuke Watanabe, taking ideas that Watanabe had come up with Toei and modifying them and shaping them into his universe. However, even during this time, Toriyama was still not working the crazy schedule he worked when he was younger. At this time, of course, he was older, and as I mentioned, he didn't really have to. There were others willing to step up, which is why when the Dragon Ball Super anime began, Toriyama didn't really contribute anything on the anime side until the Universe 6 tournament, when he began to draw new characters such as the Universe 6 fighters, and he wrote a very basic manuscript for what the TV series arcs would adapt from, as well as the young and studious Toyotaro would begin working on the Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F promotional manga during the time of that release, as well as later working on the Dragon Ball Super manga alongside Toriyama. Toriyama did some art corrections here and there, but it was Toyotaro who would produce the monthly manga with Toriyama's input. And little by little, as time went by, Toriyama sort of laid back a bit and allowed Toyotaro to influence the story with his own ideas as the series started to shape in Toyotaro's vision. But it was during this sort of Dragon Ball Renaissance, the revival of the series, that Toriyama started writing scripts for the films. Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F, Dragon Ball Super Broly, and Dragon Ball Super Superhero were completely written by Akira Toriyama. And while there was some input from people such as directors and, of course, the head of the Dragon Ball room and Toriyama's right-hand man, Akio Ioku, Toriyama was still the one that finalized all the scripts before the films were made. So even though Toriyama at this time was a very different man, I would say respectfully so that his prime was probably in the late 80s as far as being an inventive writer. He was still contributing new ideas and taking pitches from Akio and sort of molding them in his own style. For example, it was Akira Toriyama who wanted Toriyama to write a story about future Trunks, which would lead to the Goku Black arc. It was Akira Toriyama who pitched to Toriyama the popularity of Broly, which led to the creation of Dragon Ball Super Broly, where Toriyama took a character that he did not create. It was originally created by Takao Koyama back in the 90s and repurposed him and rewrote him into the Dragon Ball Super line of events, as well as introducing Gogeta into Dragon Ball Super. Obviously, as many of you know, with Dragon Ball Super Superhero, he wanted to tell a Piccolo story, but it was Akio who pitched that Gohan be the co-lead, and that would lead to Gohan fans melting when they not only saw their favorite character getting shine and becoming the protagonist, but also unlocking his new Gohan Beast form, which has become insanely popular. As I mentioned, respectfully, the Toriyama of this era was not prime Toriyama. He was older, and much like George Lucas when he wrote the prequels, the stories that he told as an older man were different. The writing consistency of both of these guys when they were younger, I felt was stronger. But the one thing that never left Toriyama, the one thing that the man has always had, and the same goes for Mr. Lucas, is a very vivid and creative imagination. And if you doubt any of this, look at Dragon Ball Daima. I don't think we've seen a more creative and diverse world in a very long time from Toriyama. What Toriyama has added to his lore in the Demon Realm, albeit controversial for some, still shows that the man, late in life, had a lot of imagination and a lot of ideas. There have been many of us who have criticized Toriyama's writing of the current era. Lots of us don't feel that everything he's put out has been a banger, whereas at one time, everything he did put out was a banger. But he still has been a phenomenal artist until the day he left us, and a very vivid, creative person. Now here we are about to close out 2024, the final year Toriyama was alive, and it was only for about 3 months. And we're about to step into unknown territory, because once Dragon Ball Daima ends, Toriyama will no longer lend his mind and his pen to anything Dragon Ball. At this point, Dragon Ball is in the hands of Shueisha and Toei, two companies that I personally don't really trust. However, two people within this sort of group that I do feel comfortable with a bit more than them is Toyotaro and Akira Toriyama. Now, Toyotaro, to me, has never really hit the levels of Toriyama. And I know that might sound controversial to some because some folks love Toyotaro. Toriyama was a prodigy and one of a kind. But Toyotaro has tried his best to follow in the footsteps of his mentor. He will be continuing Dragon Ball. In fact, if you look at even things like Dragon Ball Legends, there are now, in the recent updates, credits with Toyotaro's name listed. This was never the case before. It was always Toriyama and Bird Studios. Now Toyotaro's name is being put in the credits. Akira Toriyama is somewhat of a polarizing figure because some people in the fandom believe that all of his ideas are manufactured from corporate research, which that's probably true, and all he does is bring back old characters and use a lot of nostalgia. You've seen it with Frieza coming back, Cell Max, giving Gohan a new form that resembles his transformation in the Cell Saga, Broly. All of these things are done to capitalize on decades and decades of fandom that have been built throughout the years from the original Dragon Ball era of the 80s and 90s. It makes sense. However, Akio is also the guy who's been pushing new projects and for Toriyama to continue and for Dragon Ball to continue. Recently, at the Dragon Ball Daima premiere event in Japan, Akio himself stated that there's still more to come. And I will be very honest with you about this. As a fan, I feel like Battle of Gods was very satisfying for me. I'm not saying that I didn't like Dragon Ball Super Broly, because I loved it and I liked Superhero, and some of Dragon Ball Super I really enjoyed, some I didn't like so much. However, as a fan, emotionally, Battle of Gods to me was the perfect send-off for these characters. However, it was such a success that more came, and it allowed me to start a business talking about Dragon Ball. Now, starting a business oftentimes is just about the money, but because of Mr. Toriyama's incredible vision throughout the years, starting this Geekdom 101 channel has allowed me to open up other ventures. And so this Geekdom 101 channel is not really just about making a living, it's also fun. I have fun talking about Dragon Ball even when it's bad. I have fun making videos, coming up with ideas. I have fun reading super chats and comments. I have a good time. So no matter what, Dragon Ball will likely continue under the watchful eye of Akio and Toyotaro. I am concerned because that imagination and that creativity that Toriyama brought to Dragon Ball, and really to the world, to everything he touched, it's not going to be there. And as much as Toyotaro can improve his skills as an artist and even as a writer, will he ever truly have the imagination, creativity, and outside the box thinking that Toriyama had? Akira Toriyama was one of a kind. Anybody who's even done the smallest minutia of research will agree with that. So the future of Dragon Ball, to me, is in question, not because they're not going to make more stuff, but because I worry it's going to just become more nostalgia bait, and the characters are just going to be doing the same things they've done before. There's not going to be any outside the box thinking or any kind of, different sort of storytelling. And to me, I think Dragon Ball needs to evolve. I think Dragon Ball needs to really look at itself and come up with fresh ideas, and obviously go past the end of Z and tell new stories, or at the very least expand the universe by talking about the distant past or something different. Toriyama would have been the guy to create really unique landscapes, planets, civilizations with all kinds of different creatures. And with him not around, as a fan who loves his work, although I can criticize it when it's got flaws, it's his imagination that really is the backbone of why this series hit with so many people of so many different cultures and so many different languages around the world. If you enjoyed this video essay, watch my Toriyama documentary, as well as other videos about the man to learn about the man. Thank you for all your support. Take care.